In the quiet bedroom, suddenly, a melody sounds. At the time when I was sleeping most soundly, a piece of music entered my ears. The ringtone of the mobile phone rang. I was annoyed, but my body lay soft on the bed, like a puddles of mud, as if the fatigue from last night had not yet dissipated. Exhausted, I had no strength to turn it off. So I let it play. I worked overtime until midnight last night and only went to sleep at 3 in the morning. Today is the weekend, and I had hoped to get a good sleep, but I was disturbed again. In the confusion of consciousness, I squinted my eyes and turned over, burying my head in the quilt. My brain was very resistant to everything coming from the outside world. Sure enough, after a while, the music stopped on its own. Finally, I could catch a breath, just when it thought I could finally enter dreamland as I wished. That annoying music rang again and entered my ears. The mobile phone keeps ringing like a music player, kept ringing and made my head fill with that looping music. It was unbearable, so it threw off the quilt with a roll of my eyes and sigh along. Damn, who is it? Annoying. I can think of the exact words too. Describe my irritation at that time. I felt like I could tear a tear. Tiger apart with my hands. Indeed, it felt like not even Adiger could win against me right now. But helpless lie. I still stretched out my hand to fumble around the bedside, looking for the source of the sound. Take the advantage of my remaining sleepiness to find the source quickly and turn it off. But the mobile phone saw meds to be joking with me, and now it was silent again. I opened my eyes, rubbling the messy hair on the top of my head, and turned to see the mobile phone with its screen lit on the bedside. Half of it was hanging in the air, looking like it was about to fall. It was strange. My hands clearly swept over this place just now, but I didn't feel the phone. It grabbed the phone, and it showed to missed calls from man. Unfamiliar numbers. I frowned, puzzled lie, staring at the string of numbers for a few seconds, but it still had no impression of this number. Was it a wrong number or someone's prank? I now have no extra thoughts to dwell on this question, but just as I was about to put down the phone and continue to sleep, that string of unfamiliar numbers popped up on the phone screen again, really joking with me. Is it fun? I didn't think much at that time, only remembering that I was very angry. So I directly pressed the answer button. Who are you? The moment the call connected, my impatient words interrupted the other parties. About etude spoken words. I really thought it was a prank by a friend, and my anger had reached its peak. Without much thought, but I was wrong. Judging by the tone, the other party had no intention of playing a prank. I like that, and I could feel the others. The party was momentarily stunned, with a word choked in their throats, wanting to speak but stopping. After nearly 10 seconds, as my sleepiness had already halved, the voice came again. Hello, you're good. It was Avery's standard, young male voice. If he didn't speak, I would think he had hung up. Yum, David. His voice came again. Ikari, who you are. Disturbing my sleep naturally. My attitude wasn't good. I didn't think about who he was and asked him with a questioning tone. What's the matter? As soon as the words fell, my brain nerves suddenly twitched as if recalling what he had just said. David, I was stunned for a while. My brows furrowed, but it still couldn't remember who he was. My brain began to operate at high speed, but no matter how much I tried to recall, I still had no impression of him. While thinking, I unconsciously repeated his name, David. My voice was not loud, like a faint murmur to myself, but he heard it. The other party saw, meant to know that it might not remember him, and he reminded me. College classmates. Finally, after a few seconds of pause, I remembered. He was a classmate who used to sit behind me. I didn't T have a very deep impression of him. I only remember that he was quite quiet, a man of few words, and did not have a strong presence in class. We rarely spoke to each other, and the only few times we did, it was because of discussing problems. But we hadn't been in touch for so long, and we weren't close. So what did he want from me? Well, I was wondering. His voice came from the phone again. You are Aaron, right? Now that I knew he was a former classmate, I started to feel sorry for my poor attitude earlier. Real easy ang my gafe. I cleared my throat and pretended to be calm as I replied to him. Yes, what is it? After speaking, I repeated the question I had asked before with a different tone. Do you need something? Can we meet today? I have something for you. His tone was still as plain as before. I still couldn't understand why he suddenly wanted to contact me. I felt like refusing. But before I had thought of how to answer him, his emotionless voice came again. To be precise, it's about Mark. Almost at that instant, my brain went blank and my heart skipped a beat. In my mind, after so many years, hearing that name still made my body freeze for a while. The sleepiness was gone, and this left me dazed for a long time. He saw meds too, realized my state, and asked again softly, so is it convenient to meet you today? In the end, I agreed. Before hanging up, I still hesitated and asked that question. Will he come? I didn't specify who he was, but I thought he should know. Sure enough, his voice came from the phone again. His tone suddenly became hoarse. Mark, he won't come anymore. I swallowed and my voice was a bit choked up. Okay, I get it. After hanging up the phone, my eyes suddenly felt sore as I looked at the window with a small gap left open. Feeling blank, there was no strong sunlight coming in, so it seems like it's cloudy today. At this moment, I no longer felt sleepy, so I get up to pour a glass of water and also opened the curtains, looking at the goose feathers like heavy snow outside the window. I suddenly felt a bit dazed, as if suddenly returning to that winter 6 years ago. But still, the weather in the north is really cold. Even though spring has arrived, it is snowing outside. I shivered, wrapping my arms around my body. For some reason, even though the heating was on in the room, I still felt cold. My mind flashed once again through the events that had just happened, seeming so unreal. Like a dream, I fell into deep thought, although I don't know why David wanted to see me or what he had to give me, but he mentioned Mark, and without any reason, I wanted to go and see. David said he would come, but I always felt there was something, and I still wanted to take a chance. What if he does go? I really want to see him, even if it's just a distant, a glance. I have forgiven him, because he never believed that he would be that kind of person, treating feelings as a joke and being so fickle. He shouldn't be too in 2024. I am 25 years old, a newcomer who has just stepped into work for a few years. Him, I do not know. Perhaps he is already married, or maybe he is very happy now and does not wish for me to disturb him, but I have no choice. I can only do this. I need to look forward properly, not always stay in the past. So I decided to go today with the last bit of hope. If all goes well, I'll be able to see him. If not, consider it giving myself a closure, and it wouldn't be loss. It marked during my second year of high school. I remember very clearly. It was a day with heavy snow, and the ground was covered with layers of thick white. The last time I went to school before the winter break was to collect materials and winter break assignments. Just so, the teacher said that the end of a term exam results were out, and he brought the report cards to the classroom, ready to distribute to the students. After receiving the report card, I still had some hope, but from top to bottom, reaching half of the report card, the results were still not satisfactory. My heart had already cooled down by half. I had an ominous premonition. I widened my eyes and looked again from the beginning, looking very carefully, even using my fingers to follow. But the results were still not good. I didn't have the courage to continue looking down and decided to calm down for a while. Not having achieved superior results was like a huge stone pressing on me, making it hard for me to breathe. Although my grades were in top notch, they have always been within the top 10 in class. This exam was ABIC joint test, organized by schools in our city. Quite important, so this result was a real blow to me. My eyes suddenly couldn't stop souring, and tears were already spinning in my eye sockets. I wanted to cry, but I felt it would be so embarrassing. At the moment when the tears were about to fall, I ran out with the materials in my arms. I didn't like others seeing my vulnerable side, because that would make me look sentimental and might even be disliked D. I don't want to be disliked D. After leaving the classroom, I walked while trying hard to restrain myself. I couldn't cry. After a while, my mood stabilized. That's when I suddenly noticed the goose feather, like snowflakes in the sky. I didn't know when it started snowing, but now there was a thin layer on the ground. The entire campus turned into a cold, gleaming expanse. Look, it was snowing, but I didn't bring an umbrella. Just let it snow like this. It fits my mood. After leaving the school gate, I just walked along that road. The snows are coming heavier, and the snow was falling on my head, denser than before. Two people passed by, a father and daughter, and I was somewhat taken aback. They walked and laughed together, sharing an umbrella, but the umbrella was obviously tilted, and the father's southern shoulders was already soaked. Look, she is so happy. I don't know why, but the little girl's smile saw meds. Very infectious. Seeing her smile, I also smiled involuntarily. Unconscious lie. A warm liquid flowed across my cheek, especially different from the feelings of snowflakes falling on my face. In the cold weather, my skin was quite sensitive, and this warm th felt extremely uncomfortable. With the snowy day, I wanted to wipe away the tears, but both hands were holding books, and I couldn't free a hand. I couldn't believe that under such circumstances, I could still manage to smile. It turns out that the books didn't lie. Seeing someone else happy can really make you cry. I turned around intending to go home, thinking that would be it for today. But when passing by the junior high section, I saw that person. He came to pick up his son to go home. This scene was quite similar to the father and daughter I just saw, but looking at it did not make me happy. Yes, he will always be so loving towards his son, and always only cold reprimands for me. Suddenly, that person's gaze shot over here. He saw me, but he pretended not to see. I hate and fear the kind of looks the most, colder than towards a stranger. What is it? Afraid that I'll cause trouble? Or is it that there's only one umbrella, so you can offer me shelter? Even saying a word from afar is unwilling. He still looks that way. The way he dies is like me. I also did not go over to greet them. After a few experiences of cold shouldering, I've had enough. I'm not so low as to beg him to be nice to me. That kind of treatment, I could never ask for it. Forget it. It doesn't matter. All these years have been like this. It's no different this time. In the end, I went home covered in snow. The home I returned to was not the one with him, but my own home. Before, I would still hope for him, thinking that if I came more sensible and my grades improved, he would notice my goodness and change his attitude towards me. But that was not the case. I told myself over and over, he just hadn't discovered my goodness. But time and again, my expectations were shattered. He still disliked them, as always, even seeming lie more than before. I kept reflecting on myself, but I really didn't. Where I went wrong later, I figured it out. And I wasn't obsessed with this issue. I wanted to study well and escape from him, and live my own life. So when I was in high school, I thought I had the ability to live by myself, and simply moved out to rent a house. Since then, the pocket money that person gave me became less and less, and I didn't want to always ask him for it. He already disliked him. Going to find him might end up with a scolding. So I was always thrifty, until I couldn't even pay the rent. I went to him, but he said it was my own decision to move out. It had nothing to do with him, and I had to figure it out myself. What could Ito? So he chose to take a part-time job, but I was only 17 years old then, not even of age. Almost no place wanted someone like me. They didn't dare to employ. I could only work part-time in the school's cafeteria, but they didn't give money, just provided meals, but it wasn't too tiring. And being able to save on food expenses was also okay. During the second semester of the first year of high school, my grandmother heard about from the countryside this and came from the town to find me at school, saying she was worried. In front of her, I tried to pretend to be very happy, wanting her to know I was doing okay, not to worry her. But grandmother could see my hardships. She stood under me the most. That day I greeted her arms for a long time. After that, she stayed here, taking care of my commuting to and from school, ensuring I had food when I get home from school. So, Grandma must love me so much because I was raised by her. I suppose, after I was a month old, my parents sent me to live with my grandparents in the countryside. I didn't even have an impression of them before I turned 3. Later on, quite by chance, I learned that I have a fraternal twin brother, but he was always kept with my parents. Living in the city, Grandma asked me with treats, telling me it was because they were too busy to take care of 2. But why was I the one left behind? I would always hear other kids in my class talking about the new and exciting things their parents took them to see in the city. I was truly curious, really wanted to see what it was like inside a city. That summer when I was 8, after my incessant nagging and pouting, they took me to the city to stay for a few days. Honestly, I was thrilled at that time. I could finally see the city. I was no longer that children who hadn't seen the world. It thought they finally could be like other parents, would take me to live in the city, take me out to play. But I was wrong, terribly wrong. After arriving there, I was not happy, knowing I had little in common with my brother and sister. Fearing they wouldn't like me, I even brought my favorite and most treasured items to give them as a greeting gift. It was a toy handcrafted by Grandpa, but they threw it away without a second thought. Iwo picked it up from the ground and put it back together, piece by piece. It saw met the whole. The family didn't really welcome me. They didn't let me sleep in a bed. They made a bed on the floor for me. Even so, I still thought the city was nice, with air conditioning. Not hot at all, but every day I was there, I felt like peering into a thief, someone else's shabbiness. Once, when they had to go out, they asked me to stay home to watch my brother, to play with him. When I went to pour water for my brother, he suddenly rushed over, and before I could react, the water spilled. As expected, he started wailing loudly, and he hurried to find medicine for him to apply. Eventually, it was taken care of, and although it wasn't a severe burn, there was still some redness. When my parents came back, They didn't even ask why. They just berated and even hit me. I had no defense. Even if I spoke, they wouldn't believe me, only thinking I was making excuses. But I really felt so wrong at a grandpa, and grandma had never hit me at home. That was the first time I was beaten. I dared to cry secret lie at night in bed, the bedding wet with tears. The next morning, they sent me back, all the way. I didn't say a word. It was they who kept on talking. For a long time, after so much talking, it all boiled down to one thing. They wanted me to tell Grandma and Grandpa that I was well and that they treated me well. After that, I never asked to go to the city again, Grandpa. Grandma came after the second, months following her arrival, and he found a job nearby, specifically to clean for people. The salary was end thighs, but combined with my living expenses, it was enough for us to live here. I didn't do well on this test, and I think I better not tell Grandpa. He would feel sad for me, might even overdo it trying to comfort me walking along the road home. I bought a cake from the cake shop. Grandpa loves this, but when I got home, I didn't see Grandpa, just Grandma alone, crying. Her already frail body was trembling due to the crying, which made my heart feel as if it was being pricked by needles. Grandpa had passed away. I hadn't seen him for the last time. He hadn't eaten the cake I bought for him. Eated. To know when his illness became so severe. He saw meds fine not long ago. Grandpa must have lied again. He tricked me. I just stood there, crying uncontrollably. Grandma said she had already called them. They should be able to make it by tomorrow. We still had to eat, and she sent me downstairs to buy a can of table salt. How coincidental! Just when we ran out of salt, I really read that Grandma, in a moment of impulse, would follow Grandpa. Tears suddenly welled up in my eyes, and I struggled not to let them fall, vigorously shaking my head at Grandma. No matter what she said, I refused to go. It was winter break anyway, and I wanted to be with her every moment of the next few days. She saw meds amused suddenly and laughed. It's true. We really have run out of salt at home. Grandma really stood under me. She saw my hesitation and reluctance, and she promised I'll be fine at home, okay? She said indulgently. I still have to accompany my grandpa, daughter to college entrance exams. How can I leave so easily? The tears suddenly couldn't held back and streamed down my entire face, moved beyond words. Grandma urged again. Go on, somewhat playfully. Go now. I believed her. So I went. Everything was normal. I went downstairs to the supermarket, like usual, and bought a can of salt, even thanking the shopkeeper. With as miles to outsiders, I looked no different than usual, but I was nearly shattered. Finally, a few I couldn't hold it in anymore. Grandpa had passed away. The pillar of our home had fallen. There weren't many people on the streets. I crouched by the wall and began to cry, whimpering quietly. But then, I couldn't help it. Tears flowed like a floodgate had opened. Unstoppable. I started to cry out loud, not noticing someone approaching me. Wow, such a crier? It was a young man's voice, a bit husky, with a tone of laughter mixed with astonishment. I looked up at him with a face drenched in tears, hardly able to open my eyes. Upon closer inspection, he was a young man about my age. Not expecting such a deep voice, he was secretly smoking here. At this time, a young man smoking alone in a corner, looking so fierce with silver-dyed hair, gave the first impression of not being a good student. I watched him warily, his hand with the cigarette pausing in motion. He see us about the med incredulo, the situation he had stumbled upon. Me crying so long and so loudly all alone. Thinking I had encroached on his territory, I quickly apologized. "Sorry, I didn't know you were here. It's fine," he replied briskly, but without the intention to leave. I wasn't sure if he was joking or what, but he suddenly quipped, "Did you overpay for the salt?" He noticed the salt in my hand. I didn't respond or look up at him again, but he laughed lightly. "What's the matter then?" I ignored him, trying to regulate my emotions, wanting to come out of that recent state as soon as possible. "Why are you so sad?" I didn't answer him, but he kept asking. And if he asked again, I would start crying. Suddenly, being questioned about my emotions, the wall I had built in my mind collapsed instantly, without any buffer. I looked up at him again, tears beginning to fill my eyes once more. Seeing this, he quickly walked over and crouched head down in front of me. His actions caught me off guard, and before I could think, he suddenly extended a pack of tissues. I was still stunned and didn't reach out, so he directly stuffed the tissues into my hands. "Stop crying, okay? Wipe your tears," suddenly comforted in such a way. The tears inevitably fell like pearls. He then jokingly teased, "Your tears are going to freeze," holding the pack of tissues. I didn't attempt to open it to wipe away the tears. He looked like he was about to reach out, but for some reason, he drew his hand back. After a few seconds, he said gently, "This no one tea stop for a while. You should head home." Only then did I realize that I rushed out so hastily. I hadn't even brought an umbrella. My nose was cold, probably already from the bright red, crying or the cold. After he left, I watched his retreating figure, somewhat in a daze. The snowflakes kept falling, but it didn't feel as cold anymore, instead feeling more careful and tender. The sound of their gentle brushing as they fell was no longer heard, like falling sand, silently piling up. Holding the tissues in my hands, my heart suddenly felt a bit warmer. Who would have thought? For some reason, ever since that day, each time I walked that road, I would remember him. I had hoped for another chance encounter, but it never happened. My life returned to its normal routine. During the new year, we went back to our old home in the countryside, where there's soft and almond who buys hair. I sold my long hair, which I had grown for several years, for $600. Even though his haircutting skills weren't great, making my short hair look somewhat ugly, I didn't regret it. That the money would last me a long time, and Grandma could work a little less. When the next semester starts, it was just Grandma and me. It was already the second semester of my sophomore years, and I had to work even harder. There was no room for slack. Indeed, effort is always rewarded. Due to an exceptional performance in one exam, I was honored to become the class representative and was responsible for collecting homework. Normally, students would submit their homework to the lecturning groups, and I would deliver it to the office. But that day, after counting several times, one was still missing. I located the group leader of the missing homework and inquired whose work had not been turned in. She pointed to a boy sleeping at a back corner desk. He was quietly resting there, his desk piled high with books, completely obscured from view at the podium. We were not allowed to stack books like that, and here he was, not only sitting in the back with a short buzz cut, but also sleeping during class. Based on my first impression, he didn't seem like someone who loved studying. He looked like a tough guy, not someone easy to approach. Even caught a glimpse of someone else's shadows on him, although it was fleeting and soon swallowed by reality. Different hairstyles, different hair color. It couldn't possibly be him. I silently prayed that he would just hand in his homework. not putting me in a difficult position. Looking at the person asleep on the desk, I couldn't see his face. Based, so lie on his seating position. I couldn't remember who he was or what his name was. I didn't have any impression of him at all. Honestly, I was afraid to wake him, worried he might hit me, so I tapped his desk corner gently, trying to keep my voice soft and my face smiling. To appear more gentle, "Classmate, you haven't turned in your homework." Yet there was no response. He saw meant to be sleeping, deeply out of helplessness. I thought to shake his arm, but as I extended my hand without yet touching him, he suddenly moved. I reflexively pulled my hand back, let myself and asked again, "Classmate, your homework hasn't been turned in." I hadn't finished speaking when he looked up at me, impatiently, seeing his bloodshot eyes. I didn't dare make a sound. He squinted, his eyes half closed, his voice hoarse. I didn't write it. I saw his face then, and it truly overlapped with the face of the boy from the snowy day. Exactly the same, but his demeanor was completely different. Could they be twin brothers? In that moment, I had no desire to ponder this question. Judging by his tone and attitude, asking him to submit his homework seemed a bit difficult. "So can you manage to complete it before this class ends?" "No," he answered decisively. He was really fierce. Who could save me now? What should I do in my helplessness? I returned to my seat and handed him my homework. Placed my workbook in front of him. "Here, you can copy from this, okay?" I expected him to refuse, even to get angry, even envisioned him fling my workbook away in affect. But he just glanced at the workbook and then took it. Got it. Finally, 2 minutes before class ended, his homework was turned in. I glanced at the scrawly name on the workbook. His name was Mark. He was the news transfer students this semester, whom I had only heard of by name and never matched to a face. This was the first time I had spoken to him, and I wrestled never to speak to him again unless necessary, because he really didn't seem easy to get along with. I didn't want to invite trouble for myself. 5 Indeed, things did not go as I wished. Later on, he still kept not turning in his homework, so I had no choice but to bring the workbook to him to copy. Over time, this developed into some unspoken understanding between us. Sometimes, when he really didn't feel like writing, he would try to charm me or sweet-talk me, attempting to wheedle his way out of doing homework. As time passed and through daily gossip with classmates, I got to know him better. He was as fierce as he appeared. He was even something of a class clown, often blending in well with the back row students, and was quite popular in class. He could also liven the classroom atmosphere by joking with the teacher, eliciting. Later on, I came across some startling news that he was actually from a key high school next to ours and had good grades. Due to some circumstances, he transferred to our school, but no one knew the details. I became more curious. With such a good academic foundation, why wasn't he studying hard and instead just passing the days aimlessly? Since then, I occasionally took the opportunity to encourage him to study when he handed him the workbook, but he would just see off in disdain, not caring, as if mocking my futile efforts. During that time, our relationship seemed to warm up. It was just formal as before and went beyond just the interaction between ACLAS rep and a student who didn't submit his homework. I wasn't as afraid of him as before, and we would sometimes have a little confrontation over various issues. In terms of academics, he really couldn't help me, but in life, he genuinely did help me a lot. I thought we had become good friends, one of the few friends I had. The semester ended quickly, and on an ordinary day during the summer break, My social media app chimed with a new message. Yeah, Mark. The notification displayed. I didn't how he got my number, but I felt a surge of excitement upon seeing the message. Before I could accept the friend request, another message popped up. Quick, accept it. It sees meds like. He had something urgent to say, so I accepted. What's up? I typed. Seconds later, his message popped up. Explain this problem too. Me? I couldn't fathom why he suddenly came to me with a question, and I didn't understand his angle, but I felt somewhat relieved that he had the inclination to study. I agreed to explain the problem to him and help him with his foundational coursework. In the time that followed, he would message frequently, sometimes about problems, but most lie, just small talk. What are you doing? Have you eaten? Have you gone to bed? Can you explain this problem to me? And many more like that. His sudden warm th baffled me. I couldn't grasp what he was up to and didn't ask him, as it would seem odd. Eventually, I got used to this kind of interaction, and our relationship saw meds to grow closer. Chatting with him gradually came a habit. If he suddenly disappeared one day, not sending messages, I would feel annoyed, worried, even angry. But once he came back and explained, I would instantly forgive him, my heart unable to contain its happiness. This situation continued for quite a while. Sometimes he'd even suddenly invite me to play games, suggesting it as a way to relax occasionally. Initially, I refused, saying I didn't how to play and did. T wanted to learn, yet he persisted, proposing to teach me as a trade off for solving problems together. After he finished his exercises, I agreed, but I was too clumsy and couldn't learn, and he was patient, gently guiding me. That summer, my relationship with him progressed by leaps and bounds. For the first time, I felt it was nice to have befriended. That holiday, I learned to play games. We often played online games together and chatted. I had never believed in developing feelings over time, but I began to notice something off about myself. The me who used to have irregular schedules was now often playing games until late at night. The me who seldom used mobile phones now always looked forward to receiving messages. My friendship with him saw meds to change its nature. My senses told me I couldn't continue like this. It wasn't right. This was me original intention. After the autumn term began, I began to restrain myself, declining his repeated invitations to play games. I told him it needed Ed to focus on my studies, and he replied, sure, quite readily, but I noticed the disappointment in his eyes. Afterwards, we continued to interact in a peaceful, friendly manners, until one day, his sudden words disrupted this tranquility. It was the end of December, on Christmas night. Just as I was preparing to sleep, my phone chimed with a notification. It was Atwo. Second voice message from Marker. Without hesitation, I opened it. Illiku. His voice was hoarse, somewhat slurred, as if he had been drinking. At that moment, the feeling is still hazy in my memory. All air calling is a moment of blankness in my mind, followed by rapid breathing and an accelerating heartbeat. After calming down, I didn't know how to handle this. It was the first time anyone had ever said those words to me. I always thought of myself as plain looking, not vivacious, inherently insecure, and even harboring a dark side unknown to others. If even my family couldn't love me, how could someone else possibly like me? So after that, I didn't how to face him. I admit I liked him, but the college entrance exam was less than a year away. At such a critical times, I couldn't care less. If I followed my heart, I believed I could be impulsive. Perhaps I was selfish and ambitious. I wanted good grades and also craved love. I didn't want to reject his affection. I didn't know what to do. After the holidays were over and school began again, he was absent for the first few days. I went about my usual routine, having meals and attending classes with friends, pushing the incident to the back of my mind. Then, one day between classes, I accidentally ran into him in the hallway after leaving the girls' bathroom. I was nervous because I hadn't replied to his message and felt somewhat guilty at the sight of him. I immediately looked down to avoid him, intending to pretend nothing was wrong and walk past him. But as we brushed by each other, he suddenly grasped my wrist. His hand was hot against my freshly washed and cold wrists. The contrasting stark lie uncomfortable. I froze, my fingers clenching tightly, and I didn't dare to look back at him. In a subdued voice tinged with restrained anger, he asked, "Why are you avoiding me?" I instinctively denied it. "I'm not." "Then you pretend not to see me?" he countered, trying to cover up the truth. I made up an excuse. "I really didn't see you. You think I'm blind?" His tone was unfriendly. We had clearly made eye contact. How could I not have seen him? Didn't he respond to his question? Hurriedly pulling away, "I have to go. Class is starting." I dashed back to the classroom as if fleeing. Afterwards, I consciously avoided him in school and in the classroom, and he sensed my abnormal behavior. One day after evening self-study, as usual, I quickly shouldered my backpack and bolted from the classroom. He caught up with me quickly and stopped me on the way back to the dormitory. "Did you think me asking you to play games is hindering your studies?" he asked directly. I shook my head without speaking. "Then why?" He pondered for a moment, then asked, "Is it because I told you I liked you?" I pursed my lips, my eyes dodging, body slightly turned to the side. He saw my embarrassment, took hold of my shoulder to turn me to face him, and said, "You don't have to feel pressured. I like you. That isn't me. I haven't asked you to do anything. I haven't asked you to be my girlfriend. Can you not reject me like this?" he implored softly. I silently nodded. "Can we still be good friends from now on?" I stared at him wordless. He continued, "I won't ask you to play games anymore. Just don't avoid me, okay?" His voice was gentle, but I could detect a hint of hurt in his words. "Don, ignore me." I suppressed a smile and nodded simply. "Okay." Then he suddenly smiled, a smile I had never seen before. I had never seen him so happy. His eyes twinkled like stars, and he laughed like an innocent child. In the time that followed, he became more studious than before, occasionally coming over with questions, and his homework was always submitted on time. After finishing his assignments, he would shamelessly ask for a reward when I returned from lunch. I would always find something extra on my desk, a cup of coffee, a bottle of milk, sometimes a candy, or various little things. I knew he left them there as he passed by, but I wasn't accustomed to accepting things from others, so I later asked him to stop. He wouldn't listen, casually saying, "It's my gift. Just keep it, why fuss over it?" But I couldn't finish my sentence before he interrupted with nonchalant remarks. "If you don't like it, just throw it away." His tone was as if he was sure I would discard the items, an inexplicable confidence. Indeed, I couldn't bring myself to throw them away. Seeing me speechless, he looked rather pleased with himself. Thus, we got along harmoniously. At school, we behaved like normal friends, and we did chat on the phone after. Returning home, he was really smart, having fallen so far behind. With just a few months of catch-up before the exams, he improved significantly, though his grades weren't top a notch. He had progressed, and I was happy for him. I never thought he'd stuck to his studies with such determination until the exams. When the college entrance exam results came out, I was beyond nervous. He was nonchalant as ever. He was the one who checked the results, then showed them to me without exaggeration. It read up at the sight of the scores. He mistook my tears, visibly panicking, thinking I was upset about doing poorly. No, don't cry, you did so well. I was too excited to speak, and he continued with encouraging words. You can choose any key university you want. Really? Seeing that it showed no sign of stopping my tears, he suddenly blurted out, as if he couldn't figure out what else to say. I think I didn't do that bad, right? Well, maybe not great. Suddenly, his face showed an emotion I couldn't quite read. His voice lowered, but I really tried my best to get him off. No, you did really well. I'm just too excited. His face lit up with that childlike smile again. That's good. Afterwards, he wiped my tears away. He was someone whose emotions were always plain live visible. Mark, would you like to go to the same university as me? It blurred out the thoughts that had been circling in my mind. He nodded vigorously, his expression showing that it wasn't a big deal to him. During the 3-month summer break, which should have been thoroughly enjoyed, I found myself a part-time job instead. I was genuinely afraid of falling behind others once university began. On one busy weekend afternoon, I managed to carve out some time for a meeting. Ultimately, he won me over. That day was my birthday, a birthday no one else remembered. Yet, he prepared a birthday cake, gifts, and even a bouquet of flowers for me, touching me deeply. It was the first bouquet I'd ever received in my life. It was impulsive, but following my heart. I made a decision. I agreed to be his girlfriend. I knew the gap between us was wide. His family was quite affluent, while it came from such a troubled background. That was the difference between us. Yet, I could entrust him. I could turn away. Someone who was kind to me and whom I also liked. After meeting him, I suddenly felt that my life could be better, more meaningful with him in it. Having been raised by my grandparents, I didn't feel a deep attachment to my parents and couldn't perceive their love. I could understand why, being their children as well. My siblings could grow up in the city with them, while I was left to grow up in the countryside with my grandparents. I didn't understand why on birthdays, my twin brother could have a cakes and receive gifts, while I get nothing. Why when the family went out to eat, outsiders were invited, but not me? I couldn't fathom why. When I was clearly the one wronged, I would end up being scolded. I didn't know how they could be so heartless to abandon me and not even come back to check on their own parents when they were seriously ill. I had never known what it felt like to be loved. I longed for it, but knew that love would not come from my biological family. Now, I don't care as much about that anymore because he's here. He's given me favoritism. It never felt at home and exceptions. A sense of security I've never had. He'd celebrate my birthday just for me, buy me birthday gifts, and comfort me when I felt wronged, taking me out to enjoy my favorite foods. The kindness he's shown me cannot be fully described with words. Later, in our relationship, I learned that his parents had divorced and the mother Emmett was his stepmother. Being unhappy myself, I wasn't too sure how to comfort him, but what I could offer was my company. Indeed, Emmett in the silver-haired boy, the snow and the short-haired, fierce-looking boys in the classroom were one and the same. I hadn't mistaken him. That day, he had fought with his father, which is why he was smoking alone. As for not recognizing me, it was because I had changed my hairstyle, and I had been crying so hard the day he didn't see my face clearly, or so he said. We were both admitted to the same university, although different departments. At the beginning of our relationship, He was very clingy, which I didn't realize until then. At the time, first out-year students were required to attend evening study sessions every night after study hall. He would wait to walk back with me. He insisted on holding my hand as he escorted me back to the dorms. He even wanted to join me for lunch, which I declined. Such public displays weren't suitable, as I feared people would talk about the ugly ducklings wanting to be a swan. Besides, lunch together would take up too much time since our schedules were due to different. I didn't want him to keep making concessions for him. I proposed we keep our relationship secrets for the time being, and although he was reluctant, he agreed. One evening after study hall, in my hurry to leave, I didn't see him and walked right past. It was as if two strangers brushed by each other without an extra glance. He laughed at that, seriously pulling me aside. "You can't see such a big person as me?" I quickly apologized, explaining it really hadn't seen him. During that time, my department was busy with an event, and I was so occupied that I had little time for him. So in the school, I was always just someone passing by. He likes DDO find me for lunch, and one day right after class, he touched at my head in front of my classmates. Having been severely reprimanded by a teacher during class, I was in no mood for it and snapped at him to keep his distance. How he walked away without a word, clearly upset. It knew he was throwing a tantrum, wanting me to coax him. It knew I was at fault and hurried after him to apologize. It took some cajoling to make it up to him. He was also particularly jealous, though I found this side of him rather endearing. One memorable incident was when he talked a little too long with Molly friends, and he got jealous, the kind that refuses to admit it. That day, my classmate behind me was a boy named David, usually quiet and somewhat introverted. During a noon break, he suddenly asked me a question, and it turned around to explain it to him. As I finished and looked up, I met Mark's dark eyes at the classroom door. What a coincidence that he came looking for me at that, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. His stare made me feel inexplicably guilty. His gaze was intense. I could even feel his face darkened with jealousy. I had another task of comforting him ahead. That evening after study hall, he didn't come looking for me, so I sought him out. He was walking briskly. His strides are too big for me to keep up, forcing me to run after him. "Mark," I called out his name loudly. "Why are you walking so fast?" He spun around, pretending as if he'd just noticed me, examining me up and down. "Oh, what brings you here?" I could tell he was acting petulant, subtly reminding me of the day's earlier incident. I didn't say anything, and he went on sarcastically. "Why aren't you studying with your genius friend?" I explained that I was just discussing a problem with David today, that I am not close to him, and we don't usually talk. "Oh, the kind where you explain things head to head." He glanced at me and pouted. His petulance was amusing, almost adorable. I suppressed a laugh, trying to soothe him with a gentle voice. "No, it's just the angle. You saw it wrong." "Oh," he replied, a slight smile flickering in his eyes, though he deliberately feigned indifference to maintain an air of being upset. I tilted my head, smiling. "Are you jealous?" "No," he retorted quickly. "How could I be?" His hasty denial made me laugh out loud, and then I went over to hug him, patting his back lightly. I teased, all right, I was wrong. How could you be jealous?" He hugged me back, burying his face in the crook of my neck. His voice muffled. He was indeed easy to comfort. Then he began sniffing around like a puppy, smelling my hair while murmuring, "Baby, you smell so good." It was the first time he called me that, and my face turned bright red within his. embrace. His short hair tickled my neck, making me want to squirm. Just as I was flushed with shyness, he kissed my earlobe, gently whispering, "I really like you." That instant, my entire ear felt as if it were on fire. I froze, blushing furiously, yet deeply moved. We were on the school path, and some passers-by glanced our way. Instinctively, I tried to push him away, overwhelmed by an unprecedented shyness. He sensed my movement and hugged me even tighter, nearly taking my breath away. After a while, I didn't care anymore. The embrace felt too wonderful. For the first time, I realized that even winter didn't feel so cold. Later, he went through Ephesus where he studied like Amid Man, absorbing knowledge from my department. One day, I caught him discussing a problem with David again. During gym class, my close friend entrusted me to deliver water to a friend of hers. But what it didn't expect was that this friend was a boy, and she hadn't mentioned that. Even more unexpected lie, Mark was also there on the basketball court. So, after delivering the water, I quickly left, fearing he might see me and become unreasonably jealous again, which would mean another round. Afterwards of consoling him, he didn't seek me out for the entire day, and when I tried to talk to him, he responded indifferently. I decided to continue acting as if I was oblivious, curious to see how long he could hold out. Finally, that evening after studying as we were heading back, he couldn't take it anymore. After a few attempts to talk to him and being ignored, I stopped trying to engage. We were walking along when he suddenly stopped and turned to face me, looking serious and silent. Sensing his mood, I feigned confusion. "What's wrong?" He lost it then, bombarding me with questions. "What do you mean, what's wrong? Don't you know? Can't you tell? Just jealous, right?" I said nothing, pretending to be clueless as I stared at him, curious to hear what he would said next. He took a deep breath, looking down at me before he began a tirade. "I think, since we're boyfriend and girlfriend now, it's only right for you to greet me when we see each other at school. Also, why don't you bring me water when I play basketball, but go delivering it to someone else? What, am I not your boyfriend?" He was getting more agitated, and before I knew it, my face was cradled in his large hands. "I'm so annoyed. Can you not always talk to them? Don't be so friendly with them. You're ignoring me." He painted himself as the victim. I wanted to laugh at his vexed state, despite the inappropriate settings. After I explained the situation to him, he saw me reassured, but still a bit upset. And just when I was at a loss, he suddenly pulled me in for a frenzy of kisses, hacking at me like a kitten pecks at grains. I ended up with odd face from his kisses, but didn't, feeling disgusted in my heart. After kissing me, he ran off with a triumphant smirk, not giving me any chance to retaliate. I was stunned. Although it was the first time he done something like that, I still felt shy every time. During that period, I was truly happy, deeply happy from within. I spent almost the entire semester with him, but the consequence of such indulgence was a sharp decline in my grades by the end of the term. I even failed a subject. The professor called me to his office for a talk. Not knowing what to say, I blamed the study material for being too hard and that I couldn't keep up with the class. But I was well aware that my study attitude was no longer as serious as before. Continuing on this path, it wasn't just about qualifying for postgraduate studies. Even graduating smoothly would be a challenge. I had to spend a lot of time playing with him, and even during classes, I get distracted by little things, his every move affecting me. When the new term started and I was asked about more, I was struggling with my department courses, My friends warned me that playing too much with him would not end well, and they advised me several times to break up with him. But I refused. I didn't want to break up with him. Mark somehow heard about the breakup rumors and came running to me, drenched in sweat and in a hurry. Even so, he didn't pause for a moment, not even allowing me to speak, before he blurted out, "I won't break up." That statement stunned me, just as I was about to assure him I wasn't considering a breaking up. He became agitated. "Is it just about studies? I'll study with you. I promise I won't hold you back, okay? If that doesn't work, I'll visit you less." I was about to interjected when he suddenly grew agitated. "No," he clicked his tongue in frustration. "Why would we break up?" He paused for a moment, giving me a chance to speak. "It's not." But before I could finish, he rushed on, "You're all I have. What's the point of living without you?" Damn it. After that outburst, he fell silent, turning his head as sweat dripped from his forehead to the ground. His demeanor frightened me. He sounded genuinely angry. I patted his arm gently, trying to calm him. "Don't be upset." "I'm not fucking upset," he retorted. That certainly sounded upset to me. After clearing up the misunderstanding, I reassured him we would end the breakup. No matter what, we wouldn't part ways. During the summer break, I took a job at a time, tutoring center near the school, teaching elementary students. The pay was thighs, but it was enough for my living expenses. For some reason, my grandmother's shield deteriorated severely. I had called my father for help, but he refused to provide financial support, and I didn't know what to do. I had no other relatives to turn to, but he hadn't told Mark. I dared not let him know about my family, so I started working part-time. This life lasted for over 2 weeks, and it was indeed tough. He found out eventually, and was distressed to see me like this, offering to help me financially, but I refused. I couldn't do that to him. It wouldn't fair. One day, while I was teaching, a parent barged in, accusing me of encouraging their children to engage in premature relationships, but I really hadn't done anything of the sort. It was because their son had my photo on his phone, photos taken during lessons, and for that, I was scolded and even slapped across the face in front of so many people. I was cursed and physically attacked, completely humiliated. The parents didn't listen to my explanations, insisting it was my fault. I was branded as irresponsible and accused of luring amateurs into early romance. No one was willing to help me, though passing by and saying a word would have been enough. But they didn't, because I was new, unprotected, and not strong enough. They bullied me. I cried bitterly, a red handprint on my face, too ashamed to return, alone in the park. I sat dazed for a long time, strangely calm. When someone sat down next to me, I shifted away instinctively, but the person persisted and moved closer, about to leave. I realized it was Mark. He asked with a smile, "How was work today?" I raised my voice a little, trying to seem normal. "Very good." My injured face, Mark had been turned away from, and I was afraid he'd see it, so I never turned to look at him. He noticed my unusual state and low spirits, perhaps thinking I was just tired from work, and wanted to hold me. After hugging me for a while and sensing it was intense, he kissed me square on the lips. He had been cheerful, but after the kiss, he became serious, his voice low and hoarse. "What happened to your face?" He seemed genuinely angry now, a bit scary. Seeing me silent, he asked again, "Who hit you?" Thinking I was too frightened to tell, he gently stroked my head and encouraged, "It's okay, tell me." Somehow, what could have been easily dismissed became unbearable when he asked, and I felt terribly wrong. Tears welled up. and I struggled not to cry. Sniffling, he then held me close, patting my back gently as if comforting a child. "What's wrong? Who upset our little angel? Tell me, I'll go beat them up for you. Our Aaron is protected." Okay, how can anyone bully you just like that? At this, I could no longer hold back and began to sob, releasing all the pent-out up hurts buried in his embrace. I soon dampened his shirt with my tears as suddenly fell silent, and he thought I'd fallen asleep, his body stiffening, not daring to move lest awake me. But in his arms, I murmured softly, "Mark, nobody loves me anymore." Sensing my emotions, he spoke words I'll never forget. "Aaron, I love you only, my world saw med." To brighten up all at once later, he wanted to confront the person who had hit me, but I stopped him. Knowing his temperament and fearing he might go too far, I didn't want him to make mistakes. So we quit the job after getting paid and found working together. At first, he would call to comfort and encourage me, telling me not to rush, that things would get better. He invited me out to relax, and if I didn't agree, he'd bring me food and drinks. We saw each other only a few times during the entire break. Midway through the holidays, I agreed to spend a day out with him. He took me to an amusement park, my first time visiting one. Embarrassing lie, there were many places I had never been to, even in university, but thankfully, he was there. We enjoyed many rides and had a lot of fun. But at one point, while running and playing, he fell and started bleeding. Profuse lie from his nose, unable to stop it. I panicked and wanted to take him to the hospital, but he insisted it was just the heat causing Anos bleeding. He refused to go to the hospital and dealt with it himself in the bathroom. Later, we watched a movie that moved me to tears, and he teased me, "You're crying over this?" But I could see the glint of tears in his eyes too. Even so, seeing me cry harder, he comforted me, holding me close when he walked me home. After taking a few steps away, he suddenly came back for a tight hug, burying his head in my shoulder. He seemed a little forlorn, his voice muffled and full of reluctance. "Baby, I didn't want to let you go." His words carried an inexplicable sorrow, as if he couldn't bear a lifetime apart. I could tell he was struggling to let go, and so was I, but our situation was pressing, and it needed to strive harder for myself and for us. I stroked his hair. "Be good at comforting him. After this period, we'll make up for everything." My eyes were wet. Where he couldn't see, he hugged me tighter and tighter, as if trying to meld me into himself. So tight I found it hard to breathe. I remember the time that day we hugged for a long, and it was only after he left that I realized my neck was damp, and though we seldom met, we stayed in touch over the phone. He would call too, lull me to sleep on restless nights. I could feel his profound love for me and knew I was getting deeper into it. When we met again, at the start of sophomore years, it was as usual. He continued to bring me snacks, buy me coffee, and endless care and encouragement. Yet, something felt different. Was it estrangement from not having seen each other for a while? I didn't dwell on it, busying myself every day like a study machine, immersing myself in work. Our interactions at schools are coming infrequent. Suddenly, he didn't show up for class one day. When I went to his classroom, I learned he had taken a week off. His recent odds behavior and an unannounced break worried me, but I didn't inquire the next time I saw him, fearing he might think I was overthinking. Another winter break has arrived, and I felt an unmistakable chill, not just from the weather. His calls grew rarer, and when he did call, it was just to exchange a few words and hang up. His messages were coming slow and unusual. Was He upset about being neglected lately? I had a bad feeling. But the competition I was involved in was about to end, it thought. After securing this scholarship, we could finally be together properly. Then he switched ed departments, and we weren't in the same one anymore. Why switch in the second year? I heard about the change from others. Not him, even after moving to a new class and dormitory. He never sought me out. Why? Unable to hold back, I visited his classroom, but he wasn't there. His classmate said he was on leave again. The next time it read, someone fetched him for me. We stood looking at each other, neither starting the conversation. I asked, "Why weren't you in class the other day?" His impatient reply struck me. "What's it to you?" Then he turned to enter the classroom. We hurried after him, reaching to stop him. Is it something happened? I could entinish before he cut me off. Finally, he stopped and turned around and looked down at me. I thought he'd see something, but he didn't, frowning deeply, as if I were someone he utterly despised. He said, "Get lost. Don't bother me." His final words before entering the classroom were harsh. I was stunned. I'd never experienced anything like it for the first time. I saw him this way, a bit scared, but mostly hurt. I said nothing more, trying to appear calm. But although I looked okay on the surface, I was far from it inside. After he left, I stood outside their classroom door for a long time until the bell rang, and then I walked away. But I was deeply upset. I'd come to him, and still, this was his response. I couldn't understand what I'd done to anger him. The attitude had hurt me too. Afterwards, I started ignoring him, but neither of us explicitly mentioned breaking up. We entered a Cold War phase. Life resumed as it used to be, going to class alone, eating alone at the cafeteria, or passing by him on campus. I'd instinctively avoided him. We were no longer in the same department, and with fewer chances to meet. He never took the initiative to see me, immersed myself in studies and competitions, spending my days in the lab. During that time, he rarely appeared at school. I hardly saw him. I learned from inquiries that he was frequently taking leaves, sometimes a few days, sometimes a week. Worried about him approaching with exams, I called one weekend, but he didn't answer. I messaged him, "What are you up to?" and predictably got no reply. He always played disappearing acts. The next afternoon, he finally responded, "Just woke up." I asked, "What have you been up to lately?" It took him to full minutes to reply, "Playing games." "Oh," I said, angry. It was exam time, and he was still fixated on gaming. His recent behavior was off. He was this cold before. He used to text, "Baby, I'm playing games, what's up?" with an emoji to soften the message. Now I was met with curt texts and silence on calls. Previous lie. A single O from me would instant lie alert him to my mood, prompting a call to check on me. But not this time. No call came. I began to doubt myself. What had gone wrong? It made no sense why he would change so abruptly. It couldn't because he likes someone else. Recalling our past, I refused to believe he could be so fickle. Yet his actions spoke otherwise. And I wanted to bring back the Mark I. Knew, but I couldn't drop my commitments. So it agreed to meet him on weekends. He wouldn't see me, claiming. Later when I called again, he wouldn't even answer. He stopped responding to messages. In all last-ditch efforts, I messaged him feigning injury, but received no concern, just an irritable, "Aren't you annoying? Stop texting. I'm gaming." Do you know you Ray being annoying? He used to say I wasn't clingy enough, telling me that a qualified girlfriend should always pay attention to her boyfriend, knowing when to act coy and clingy. Now, He says he hates it when I act this way. Despite this, he still hasn't brought up breaking up. I really don't understand what he's thinking. Lately, I've seen him less and less around campus. The most recent time I saw him, I was on my way to see a professor. Coincidentally, his professor shared an office with mine. He looked much thinner and saw met and well, which worried me about his health, as I suddenly knocked and entered the office. Many people, including him, instinctively looked up, but the way he looked at me had completely changed. He became cold, and all I could see in his eyes was endless indifference. Then, on the first day of exams, I saw him laughing and carrying books for another girl in the hallway, which shattered my heart. That afternoon, when I went to find him, he was absorbed in his phone playing games and showing no interest in talking to me, unable to hold back. I stormed into his class and snatched his phone from his hands. He erupted in anger, yelling, "Are you sick?" So annoying. His loud voice attracted the stares of nearby students, making me very uncomfortable, yet filled with anger and tears. I stared back at him, hoping to see some softness in his heart. Suddenly, a girl's voice from the phone asked in a coquettish tones, "Brother, why have you stopped moving?" It was then I realized the game he mentioned involved flirting with girls online. I didn't let the conversation continued and turned off the phone, knowing he might ignore me if I asked him to step outside. I looked at the phone in my hand and decided not to return it. I walked out of the classroom to the deserted sports field, and sure enough, he followed shortly after. He tried to snatch back his phone, but it quickly hid it behind me. I had thought his recent weight loss was due to illness, but it was clear he had been neglecting his health by playing games day and night. It was such a waste, especially since his grades had started to improve after a period of hard work. He is smart but lacks the will to study and ambition. Yet, now he had fallen into the habit of gaming all day, flirting with girls in games during such a critical time. I couldn't believe it because I thought he was not that kind of person. Mark should not be this way. Looking up at him, tears uncontrollably filled my eyes as he held his phone. "What do you mean by this?" he scoffed, showing an indifferent expression. "You've seen it all, haven't you?" Clinging to a sliver of hope, I asked him, "Do you still like me, Mark? Just one word of affection from you, and I would forgive everything." He remained silent, and his silent expression left me utterly disappointed. I asked, "Do you want to break up?" Feeling a warm tear sliding down my cheek, I didn't bother to wipe it away. "Whatever," he said indifferently, infuriating me even more. It's strange how love can turn to apathy so suddenly. I wiped away the tears with my fingers. "Fine then," my voice trembling uncontrollably. "Let's break up." I thought that initiating the breakup would give me the upper hand, but I soon realized that wasn't the case. His life saw met and changed without me, while I felt utterly empty. My social circle had shrunk since we started dating, but his remained large. Seemingly unaffected, I couldn't help but think he was heartlessly moving on. I was naive to think love would last forever, so I signed up for more competitions and threw myself into my studies. Indeed, keeping busy helped distract me from thinking too much. However, 2 months before the holiday break, my emotions were stirred again by him. I bumped into him and another girl, Julia, one of his friends, on the rooftop. Seeing them holding hands reopened old wounds. I pretended not to see and hurried away. That whole day, I was distracted, reminiscing about our past until I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. What finally made me give up on him was learning the truth behind our relationship. My friend accidentally overheard Mark talking to his friends. He was with me not out of genuine affection, but because of a lost bet. Knowing this, I felt surprisingly calm, a calmness even I didn't expect. Looking back, he had fooled me well. I wondered if he had ever truly liked me, even for a moment. I didn't dare confront him about it. It didn't matter anymore. I just wanted to focus on my studies and getting into a good university. In the end, I tried to forget him. I can't deny the support he once offered me when I was struggling, nor can I deny the happiness I felt during our relationship. It was like encountering a flagging lights, brightening and dimming unpredictably. I can't be sure if he ever truly likes them, but my feelings for him were real. He might have thought he was cleverly manipulating me, but he never confided how red. 2 months before graduation, he unexpectedly transferred schools, a decision that baffled me at this stage in our education. But perhaps it was for the best. Eventually, I got into a decent university, purchased my master's degree, and moved away from that environment. Yet, the only downside was losing him. I thought time would help me forget, but I often found myself uncontrollably thinking about him. During my first winter break in graduate school, I desperately wanted to know where he was, only to be shocked by the discovery he hadn't transferred schools. His neighbor informed me that the family had moved abroad last year, but the exact country was unknown. After failing to find him, I tried to convince myself to let go. Sometimes, I find it hard to understand. I didn't know what heartbreak is like for others, but the light he encountered during my adolescence is hard to forget. Many say the best way to forget someone is to sever all ties and let time heal the wounds. So, for the past 2 years in graduate school, I kept myself busy joining clubs, volunteering, taking part-time jobs, and competing in contests. Outsiders might see me as accomplished and independent, but only if know how unhappy I truly am. I believed staying busy would prevent any distractions from affecting me. Yet, when I finally had a moment of rest, my thoughts inevitably drifted back to him. Ever since Grandpa passed away due to illness, Grandma has become much lonelier. I went away for university, and Grandma always said it was inconvenient for her to travel back and forth as it would trouble me. I repeatedly tried to persuade her to come live with me, but she never listened. I couldn't bear to leave her alone at home. So this year, without her consent, I insisted on bringing her to live with me. She couldn't possibly take good care of herself, and I was well aware of how those two treated her. I felt more at ease with her by my side, but she didn't persist for long. In my first year of working, Grandma passed away. Perhaps she missed Grandpa too much and went to look for him. Suddenly, I lost all hope in life. I couldn't see the future, and I didn't understand the purpose of my efforts. I began to fall into a state of degeneracy, as if I were wandering alone in a vortex of darkness. After some time, I visited a psychologist, and my mood began to improve. I started to pick myself up, planning to live well, but I still couldn't completely forget Mark. Without fully letting go of him, I would always live in the shadows. So, I decided to give up on him completely, throwing away everything related to him. This included the only photo of us together that had been in my album for a long time. It had been so long since we'd seen each other that the photo was my only impression of him, but now I've thrown it away. Even so, when I occasionally remember him during my free time, my heart still aches. People often say that everyone will have regrets in love. I've truly felt this. Used to think of him madly, but now I'm trying desperately to forget. However, I've found that the harder it's to forget, the more he sinks into my past. making it impossible for me to extricate myself. Perhaps the best way to forget someone isn't to cut off contact, but to part amicably. Being able to let go bravely is the most courageous thing one can do. The phone call that came today was timely. So today, I dressed up nicely with the intention of seeing him and letting go. We agreed to meet at a cafe. On my way there, I sat in the car leaning against the window and thought a lot. Honestly, I was nervous, but also somewhat excited. I had imagined our reunion countless times in the past. I might have clung to him and demanded answers for why things had become this way. But now, I no longer care about those things. Ray here said what I would say in my mind. When I arrived at the designated place, David was already there waiting for me. I walked over and sat down, scanning around for Mark, but he was nowhere to be seen. David, interpreting my actions, smiled at me and said softly, "He's gone." I was stunned, unable to believe what I was hearing at that moment. But then I wondered if he knew about my story with Mark and I was making a joke. At that time, people like DTO used dead as a nickname for jerks. It joked. How could that be possible? It's true he passed away, he replied. In that moment, it felt like a bolting from the blue struck me. I looked at his expression, searching for a sign of jest, but his serious look didn't seems to be joking at all. He continued, "He died 4 years ago." Suddenly, I was rooted to the spot as if the world had quieted down, and all I could hear was his words. My heart felt as if it had been pricked, catching sharply. His expression truly didn't seem like a joke, and I couldn't believe what was happening. Initially, I thought about that hearing him would leave me indifferent, even if I had to pretend not to care. I had prepared for everything before coming and even drafted responses in my mind, but the acute pain that had receded for so long surged back, and I struggled to restrain myself from crying in public. Yet somehow, without knowing when, I found myself in tears. Later, I don't remember how ill if that place. I and Lee Ray call saying goodbye to David before leaving, and he gave me a small box, saying it contained things that Mark hadn't taken with him and that I had the right to know about them. Holding that box, my thoughts were chaotic. It wasn't heavy, but it felt immense, light burdensome as I walked. Snow was still falling outside the car window, annoying lie persistent throughout the day. When I get home, I immediately opened it. Inside was a diary and a cell phone. The cell phone was off due to a dead battery. I wasn't sure if it would turn on again. It charged the phone and then opened the diary. The handwriting was clear at first glance. October 15th, 2006, someone came to ask me for homework today. Hilarious. Do we look like the kind of person who does homework? But seeing that she's having a hard time, I compromised. October 22nd, 2006, heard someone was asking for my contact info. Didn't expect that. Has still quite popular. October 29th, 2006, copying. Homework every day is such a pain, but her hands writing is really nice. 11/3/2006, Erin is so nagging. Can someone please take her away? December 16th, 2006, damn, really fed up. These days, there are still people like old mothers urging others to study. The 7th of January, 2007, hilarious. She's actually serious about explaining the problem. Don't want to listen, but I didn't want her to be disappointed. January 15th, 2007, got her number from a friend. Really want to take her gaming. The 5th of March, 2007, why is she so persistent in trying to persuade me to study? What's so good about studying? The 9th of April, 2007, she really sucks at games. Speechless, can't carry at all. April 27th, 2007. Aaron, the 10th of May 2007. Damn, she changed her hairstyle today. So cute. The 3rd of June 2007. I went to study hard. July 8th, 2007. I went to go to the same university as her. 7. 26 2007. Really want to make her my girlfriend. The 1st of October 2007. Confessed, but she ignored me today. 10:03 2007. Why hasn't responded to me? The 8th of October 2007. Woman's heart. Needle at the bottom of the sea. Why is she suddenly ignoring me? The 11th of October 2007. Made up. Feeling great. December 25th 2007. Secret. Like gave her an apple for Christmas. She smiled like an idiot. Who makes Aish on an apple? But still quite cute. So that's how he saw me. January 18th 2008. What to do? Liking her more and more. June 24th 2008. The college entrance exam results came out today. Was too nervous to check, so I checked for her. She did pretty well. 07/18 2008. Today is her birthday. Prepared up birthday cakes and flowers for her. Hope she likes it. Not bad. And unexpected lie, I'm no longer single. The 8th of August 2008. Wow, how is she getting cuter? Really can stand it. 08/14 2008. Held hands today. Her hand is really small and soft. August 27th 2008. She always says she has too many flaws lately, but I don't like her thinking like that. You don't have to shine to be perfect, so she can be imperfect. In my eyes, she always sparkles. She has many strengths that others don't see actually. I'm lucky one. The 10th of September 2008. She keeps saying she's not pretty and asks me what I like about her. I jokingly said I like an attractive girls, but she doesn't know. I really think she's beautiful. November 24th 2008. Damn. Recently that glasses guy keeps looking for her, but I can't disturb their studies. So annoying. November 28th 2008. She smells so nice and soft. Want to eat her up. The 4th of December 2008. I'm so clever. If you can't beat them, join them. Now he's my good buddy. 12/31 2008. Improved on the final exam. She rewarded me with a kiss. Damn, so sweet. January 20th 2000. As I flipped through the pages, the text quickly aligned with my memories, emerging like scenes from a movie. Towards the end, the gaps between the dates of each diary entry grew longer. Then, I saw what I had never known. July 14th 2009. It seems I'm sick. July 19th 2009. Cancer. Damn it all to hell. July 25th 2009. I really want to see her, to hold her. Tears filled my eyes as I read this. During this summer, I refused to go out with him. My tears dampened the half page of the diary. I frantically wiped it with my sleeve. The tears on the paper dried, but the prickling pain in my heart lingered on. How heartbroken he must have been. I continued, reading through my tears. The 2nd of August 2009. Took her to the amusement park today. She was so happy, but it suddenly had acrosis. And when she insisted on going to the hospital, I refused. That was close. Nearly got found out. I really can't bear to leave her. She saw my reluctance, but probably thought I was blaming her for neglecting me, and even consoled me, saying she would make it up to me. Fool. I don't save time at August 30th 2009. I hate staying in the hospital. So annoying. I want to go back to be with her. September 20th 2009. It's getting worse. I've been so busy lately. Less time to spend with her. I wonder if she's mad at me. The 12th of October 2009. My worthless body fainted again today. When I woke up, I was already on a hospital bed. Can she manage? Alone at schools, I'm worried about her. 10:20. 2009, the doctor says it's incurable. I can give her a future, but I want her to be happy. November 14th, 2009, I want her to hate me. November 26th, 2009, why won't you break up with me? Even after the way I've treated her? The 3rd of December, 2009, woke up to find many messages, all from her. I said I was playing games, but I lied. I'm not annoyed with you. I'm just in the hospital for chemo. She got hurt. I'm so heartbroken. Such a fool. And so careless. How can I leave you with peace of mind? December 19th, 2009, she's lost weight recently and does smile as much as before. I knew the way she left her books in the hall, so I deliberately helped another girl when she passed by. She must have run off to cry. Secret lie. Again, December 28th, 2009, I knew she'd come looking for me after seeing that. So I borrowed a phone from a guy next to me before she arrived, pretending to play a game. I'm really good at this. Could go acting soon. It thought she would break up right away, but I didn't expect her to snatch the phone from my hand. I didn't see someone speaking in the game either, but that also played into my hands. Sure enough, she suggested breaking up. Watching her holding back tears made me have a moment of weakness, but I can hold her back. Her future should be blooming. As for me, a flower on the brink of withering. I shouldn't disturb her anymore. 2016. 2010, she's become a top student again. That's good, but I feel something's not right with her. Should it make her hate me more? Leave her with no good memories? February 27th, 2010, asked a friend for a favor. Now the identity of the jerk must be fully established in her heart, but I haven't, like Danielle's, haven't made any bets. I think I regretted it the moment I saw her running down the stairs, though it would be nice if she remembers me, even if it's with hat red. The 6th of March 2010, damn it. Why me? I must have done something terrible in my past life to deserve this torment. 0324. 2010, the illness is getting more severe. I had no choice but to transfer schools. But actually, I spent all day in the hospital room, looking at those machines, listening to the noises they make. It's so oppressive. I want to smash them. They're suffocating me. I miss her so much. April 15th, 2010, my hair is gone. April 25th, 2010, it hurts so much. I don't want to die. I'm still so young. July 18th, 2010, baby, happy birthday. Remember to eat cake. Remember to be happy. July 20th, 2010, the competition you participated in must have ended. You surely got a good result, right? You're so smart. You'll meet your other half in university, right? You'll be happy, right? But can you take a little longer to forget me? The 2nd of August 2010, I'm dying. Aaron, I wanted to see you one more time, but now I am so ugly. I'm afraid I'd scare you. Better not. Oh, the 7th of August 2010, time flies. Tomorrow is my birthday. If possible, I hope you're happy. The 8th. Tears streamed down my face silently as I read. I could end Timogene what he felt writing these words. How much he must have suffered. He was once so full of life. Why did he have to endure this? He was only 21, always striving to improve, with a bright future ahead. He could have been happy at this moment. I despise the world for being so cruel to him. It's so unfair. I also load-head myself. There were signs all along. His behavior was so clearly abnormal. Why didn't I notice it then? Why didn't I insist on seeing him? Why wasn't he more assertive with him? The boring pages of the diary in my hands. A few brown-ish bloodstains. His last marks before he left. Suppressing my sobs. My throat ached, and my chest felt as if it were being crushed. The pain was so intense I couldn't breathe. At the bottom of the box was a photographed. It was the one we took at the amusement park, our only picture together. On the back of the photo was a line of words. If I live, I'll marry you. If I die, I hope you find happiness. I carefully tucked it into the diary, holding it to my chest. Maybe I agreed too much, but my chest began to hurt in waves, and I fell asleep unknowingly. When I woke up, it was deep into the night. I felt dazed, as if everything that happened during the day was a dream. But the diary in my arms was so real. I went to the living room for a glass of water and noticed the phone that was charging. It ran to it as if it were a beacon of hope. The water glass top let over, spilling across the floor. But I couldn't spare any attention for it. Holding the power button, the phone vibrated briefly and surprisingly turned on. Those seconds waiting for it to boot felt as long as these 4 years. It browsed through all the apps on the phone. There was nothing new, just our old chat logs and a few voice recordings of me and him. These were so precious to me, as my copy had been deleted, so now this, the only one in the world, was as unique as he was. I read all the chat history and replayed the voice recordings over and over. Listening to them, I found myself crying again. I didn't know why I had so many tears left to cry today. Finally, in the spam folder, I found many records of money transfers. I was stunned, scrolling through them one by one, all sent to the same person, Anna, my grandmother, who raised me since I was a child. So he had been secretly helping me out all this time. The last straw broke inside me, but this time I didn't cry. Perhaps because I had ran out of tears. I wanted to visit my grandparents, whom I hadn't seen for so long. Then I suddenly pictured Mark, lying alone in the hospital bed, looking so haggard, so lonely. I opened the drawer under the table, and sure enough, the medicine the doctor prescribed a few months ago was still there. It suddenly laughed, a laugh of relief. A released Erin committed suicide at 4 a.m. by taking sleeping pills at home until the last moment of her life. She wore a smile saying, "Mark, don't be afraid. I'm coming to find you." There was no quiet alley, no roses to bid her farewell. On an ordinary snowy night, her life remained there forever. The youth's springtime was paused in that summer, but his love never ceased. His life ended at 21, but their story did not, because the girl's shirt ached for him. She joined at him for years. Later, on that snowy night,